Okay, so this is a video where I'm going to go through practice exam 5. A couple of things before I get started. I'm going to go really slowly through this exam and explain everything. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but you shouldn't necessarily think that, if it takes me 20 minutes or 25 minutes, or I don't know how long it's going to take, that it necessarily should take you that long. If I were just to work through this without going through and explaining every little thing, it would be a little faster. And also notice I'm going to do what you should do, which is just be very careful. I'm going to read everything and make sure I understand it. Okay, so start at the top, practice exam 5. My name is Rick Brush. I am in section A01, and that's for grader use only. I am not the grader. Exam has 12 questions, worth 110 points. Multiple choice, there's obviously no partial credit, but for other questions, there may be partial credit for incorrect answers if in the grader's judgment sensible things were happening. Okay, so let's get started. Question 1. According to the syllabus, what is the policy regarding early final exams? Let's go through the answers. A, there are no early final exams. Wrong, there are, actually. If you look at the syllabus, you'll see there's going to be an early final offered. B, early final exams are offered only to students who have a verifiable conflict with another final. No, that's not true. Anyone can take the early final. Read the syllabus. An early final is offered during week 10 for anyone who wants to take it. That is correct. None of the above. Well, that's not correct because C is correct. So I'm going to mark C. An argument that commits a begging the question fallacy, A, will necessarily both be valid and sound. No, it may not be sound. I talked about this in lecture, actually. B is correct. It will be valid, and it might be sound. It may or may not be sound. Why will it be valid? Because the conclusion is one of the premises, or is included in the premises somehow. So if the premises are true, the conclusion will have to be true because the conclusion is one of the premises, right? P, therefore P, that would be valid. If P is true, it will also be sound. If P is false, it won't be sound. So B looks correct. It will necessarily be valid, and it might be sound. But let's read the other answers. It will necessarily be invalid. No, that's not correct. In fact, it will necessarily be valid. It's impossible to determine the argument's formal features from the fact that it commits an informal fallacy. There's a typo here, from the fact. Okay, that's false. Actually, sometimes you can tell formal features of an argument from the fact that they committed an informal fallacy. Begging the question is one. We know it's going to be valid. If you know an argument commits false dichotomy or slippery slope, which will come up in chapter 6, you know it's got a certain formal features, right? It's got the form of disjunctive syllogism or something. So D isn't right. So answer B is correct. Question 3. What's the key problem with an argument that commits an alternate description fallacy? A, the new description of the argument or event is false, and the original description is true. That's not correct. With alternate description, both descriptions of the object or event might be correct. They might be accurate descriptions. So that's not, the problem isn't that one is false. They could both be accurate. B, the new description of the object or event is misleading, while the original description is not misleading. That's not a great way to word it. It's not really that it's misleading. This might be let's see if there's a better answer. And there is, number C. The new description of the object or event is less appropriate than the original description. That's really sort of the key definition, actually, of alternate description. It's in the definition I gave in lecture, and I talked about it. And so if you have to pick what's the best answer, C is the best answer here. All of the above is definitely not true, because A isn't true, for example. I can see why if, for instance, if C weren't here, suppose C was something that was obviously false also, then B might be the thing to write because that's at least closer than any of the others. It's still not a great answer because really the problem isn't so much that it's misleading. The problem is that the description isn't appropriate for the topic that is being discussed. That's really the better answer. Okay, next up, for questions 4 and 5, so there's going to be 2, where I'm going to have to do a bunch of writing. Great. Provide an analysis of the argument that includes the following points. Does the passage contain an argument? If it's ambiguous, meaning, well, you could read it 2 ways. You could either read it as an argument or not an argument, or you might read it as an argument, one kind of argument or a different kind of argument. Note the various possibilities. For any argument that might be there, meaning if there's more than one argument possibly, maybe there's 2 different ways to read it. So if you recall the example I gave in class about the smoking, the parent says, hey, you shouldn't smoke. And the kid says, hey, but you smoke. Remember, there are 2 ways to see that. It could be an argument that my dad's a hypocrite, or it could be an argument that it's okay for me to smoke. So that's one kind of ambiguity. And if the analysis question had that kind of ambiguity, I would write both. I would say something like, well, there's 2 ways, 2 possible things going on here. First, maybe the kid is just saying dad's a hypocrite, in which case it's a good argument. Or maybe the kid is saying that it's okay if he smokes, in which case it's tu quoque. So you'd give an analysis for, that's what it means when it says for any arguments that might be there. Identify the conclusions, the premises, and whether they're explicit or implicit. Finally, if there's an argument, or more than one, determine whether it commits any of the informal fallacies. Okay. First one, number 4. I'm going to stay on Facebook and not move my information over to Google+. I mean, Facebook has 30 times as many people using it, and all my friends are on it. Okay, is there an argument here? Yeah, it kind of is an argument for why it's better to stay on Google, or stay on Facebook as opposed to switching over to Google+ as one's main sort of social media outlet. So yes, there's an argument. So I'll say that. Yes, there is an argument. It's not really ambiguous. I don't really see any other way of interpreting this. Maybe if I thought about it long enough, but at least on the face of it, that seems pretty obvious, so it's not ambiguous. If it's ambiguous, note various possibilities. Okay, it's not ambiguous. For any argument might be there, be sure to identify the conclusion and the premises. Okay, the conclusion is that I should stay on Facebook rather than move to Google+. Okay, what are the premises? Well, there's kind of 2, although they're connected, but we can treat it as 2. Facebook has 30 times as many people using it. All my friends are on Facebook. Okay, so there's kind of 2 premises. Is, first off, the conclusion, is it explicit or implicit? It's kind of, I'm going to stay on Facebook. It doesn't really say I should, but it's the conclusion is close to explicit. I'm going to stay on Facebook. That's pretty close to it. I should stay on Facebook. Okay, the premises are 1, Facebook has 30 times as many people using it. By the way, something I should point out, try to write more clearly than I'm writing, if you can. It makes it easier for the people who are grading. My handwriting kind of sucks. So that's the first premise. Facebook has 30 times as many people using it. And number 2, all my friends are on it, where the it is Facebook. All my friends are on Facebook. Okay, so those are the premises. So it looks like it's bandwagoning, right? That it's a regular sort of ad hominem, ad populum bandwagoning argument. Why? Well, it's saying a lot of people use Facebook, so I should use Facebook, or all my friends are on Facebook, so I should stay on Facebook, as opposed to Google+. So it looks like a bandwagoning fallacy. But remember, spotting the possible informal fallacy, that's just step 1, okay, which we've done here, right? Is it straw man? No. Is it any, it's not any of the other possible things. If it's anything, it's going to be appeal to ad populum bandwagoning. Next question is it really a fallacy? Well, remember, what you have to ask is, well, in this case, is the fact that a lot of people do it relevant to the conclusion? Okay. And arguably for something like social media, it is relevant, right? You don't want to be on a social media platform that doesn't have anyone on it, right? Or doesn't have any of your friends. The whole point of social media platform is to be on one or be connected to ones that do have a lot of people on them or have the majority of your friends or something on them. So in this case, it looks like it kind of fits the pattern of ad populum bandwagoning, but it really isn't a fallacy because the appeal to the fact that a lot of people do it is relevant in this case to whether or not I should do it. So that's what I'm going to say. The argument fits the pattern for ad hominem bandwagoning, but it isn't a fallacy. Why? Because whether or not a lot of people use a given social media platform is obviously relevant to whether I should use it. Okay, so that's a pretty good analysis, right? Identified that it's an argument and kind of what the conclusion is, that it's pretty close to explicitly stated there, what the premises are, and it fit the pattern of one of the fallacies, but because the conclusion or the premise about a lot of people doing it in this context is relevant, it's not really a fallacy. Okay, that's number 4. Let's move on. to number 5. Same thing here. Same questions that I'm going to answer and analyze. Okay, the head of product development division has accused our division of not hiring enough women and minorities. This is total crap. If you look carefully at their records, you'll see that they haven't hired a woman or Latino for over 6 years. Okay, is it an argument? Well, yeah, there's a couple possible ways to interpret this, but really only one that requires analysis. You could say, look, there's not an argument here. That the person, suppose I'm the person who's being criticized here. This is my division, and my division's being criticized by product development division. Maybe I'm just saying, hey, they're criticizing me in this certain way, but look, they're also doing something that's bad. But I'm not trying to make an argument. I'm just pointing out that they're doing something bad. But I'm not claiming that that justifies my behavior or anything. That's pretty obviously not what's going on here. It's pretty clearly, especially the "this is total crap," that kind of is suggesting that, well, what's total crap? Our hiring practices. So, which was the conclusion of the other division's argument, right? So this is clearly an argument against the criticism. The criticism being that my division isn't hiring enough. So it is an argument. The conclusion isn't explicit. Okay? And nowhere in here does it say the hiring practices of our division are fine as they are. It doesn't say that. Okay, that's clearly what it's trying to establish. It's trying to, because the criticism is, hey, your hiring practices aren't fine, and I'm trying to counter that argument. Okay, so my conclusion is supposed to be, no, they are fine. The conclusion is not explicit. Not explicitly stated. It is that our divisions hiring practices are okay. Something like that. Is there a premise or premises? Yeah. The premises are the division that's accusing us of having bad hiring practices. They have bad hiring practices themselves. Okay. The premise, and that's the only premise, really. It's explicit. It's right there. They haven't hired a woman or Latino for years. Premise is that the product development division the ones, which is the division accusing us of bad hiring practices, themselves have the hiring practices that we have, or at least that they're accusing us of having. That might be a better way of putting it. In fact, I'll put that they are accusing us of having. Okay, so what's the conclusion? Our hiring practices are okay. What's the premise? The people who are accusing us of having bad hiring practices themselves have those bad hiring practices. Okay, they're not hiring, they don't hire any women or minorities or something like that. That's textbook ad hominem tu quoque. Okay. This is not a context where the fact that that division also has the bad hiring practices somehow justifies our bad hiring practices or anything like that. So it does fit the pattern, and it really is fallacious. Okay. The argument is an ad hominem to quoque. It tries to justify our actions against criticism by pointing out that the criticizers themselves have those same practices. Boom. Okay. That's pretty good analysis. It's not really ambiguous. There's really no other kind of plausible way to read that. So let's move on. Now a bunch of multiple choice. Now, again, I'm going to go really slow, because I'm not just going to read it and mark the best one, but I'm going to sort of go through and verbally explain on this video why it's right and why the other ones are wrong. So it's going to take a lot more time than it would take you to sort of answer these. But let's get started. Number 6. I've read the insurance industry's brief to the effect that allowing high punitive damage settlements encourages groundless litigation without making any significant impact on corporate wrongdoing. Okay. While this brief is fascinating, it cannot be taken seriously. The insurance industry, who ultimately has to, there's kind of bad wording there. The insurance industry they're the ones that have to pay for high settlements such as these, so their argument is flawed. Okay. So basically, the insurance industry is saying, hey, there shouldn't be these court settlements where there's these high payout settlements from people that are bringing companies to court. And the person is arguing against that by just saying, well, look, the insurance industry made this argument, but they have a reason to make this argument. They're the ones that would be paying the price of these high settlement court costs. So, of course, they're going to make that argument. Therefore, the argument's flawed. So that's an ad hominem circumstantial. Okay, so before I even look at the answers, I'm thinking, okay, to me, this looks like an ad hominem circumstantial. Let's go ahead and look at the answers. Straw man. Is it a straw man? Now, there's no straw man going on here, right? It is replying to the insurance industry's argument, but it's not recharacterizing their argument at all, let alone inaccurately, right? So it's not a straw man. Is it genetic? Well, kind of. It is, because it's making appeal to where the argument came from. Remember, all of the ad hominems are a special type of genetic fallacy. And what I said in class is that what you do is, if you see something like that, that's a genetic fallacy, you first ask, well, does it fit any of the pattern of any of the ad hominems? If it does, then it's that ad hominem argument. If it doesn't fit any of the patterns, specific ad hominem patterns, then it's a genetic fallacy, sort of generic genetic. So B would be the right answer if there's no better answer, but there is a better answer, ad hominem circumstantial. It does fit a specific pattern, so that's what it is. Is it appeal despite? No, that's not even possible because it's not characterizing the insurance industry in a negative way to sort of make you feel spiteful about it or anything like that. So straw man is not even possible. Appeal despite is not even possible. The only two possible ones that are even in the ballpark are B and C, but C is the better answer because it specifically fits that pattern. In order for it to be genetic, it would have to be appeal to the source of the argument, but not fit any of the ad hominem patterns. So it's not this. So it's C. Okay, number 7. People do not have free will. People always act on their strongest desire, and their strongest desire is what determines their behavior. But these desires are determined by factors outside the person's control, such as genetics and social pressures. Okay, so this is an argument for free will. Okay, the conclusion is right here at the top. And what are the premises? Well, people always act on their strongest desire, and their strongest desires are determined by factors outside their control. Those are the premises. Okay. Let's go through the examples and see what it is. Begging the question, yeah, I think it might be. Let's get back to this one though, because we can eliminate the other ones, and then we'll get back to begging the question. Is it straw man? That can't be straw man, because in order for it to be straw man, it would have to be responding to someone else's argument. Maybe someone else, that would be arguing that we do have free will, but it's not responding to anybody else's argument, so it can't be this. Is it bandwagoning? No, that's not even possible. It's not saying, well, we don't have free will. Why? Because millions of people think we don't have free will, therefore, we don't have it. So that's not even in the right ballpark. Alternate description, yeah, again, that's not happening either. It's not redescribing anybody else's argument or any other situation in a different way from how someone else described it. There's nothing like that going on here. So the only option left is begging the question, and that one seems right, okay? Because think of it. Suppose you thought there was free will. Remember how I characterize, or how to sort of determine if an argument's begging the question. If you don't believe the conclusion, would you, for that very reason, just immediately not believe one of the premises? Because that premise just basically is the negation of your belief. Okay? And yeah, the first premise, right? Suppose you think people do have free will. Well, then you're just going to, for that very reason, you just think this premise is false, right? You think that, well, no, free will, people have free will means that they don't always act on their strongest desire. Sometimes they'll have a strong desire, and maybe even you can tell what their strongest desire is, but they choose to do something else anyway. So this person's opponent is just not going to accept this first premise, just out of hand. Just the mere fact that they don't accept the conclusion means they're not going to accept that premise. So that's begging the question. Number 9. Your Honor, yes, I admit I was doing 135 zone. But if you find me guilty, my insurance rates will skyrocket. I won't be able to afford to pay for my daughter's modeling school. Surely you can't find me guilty. Okay, right away I'm thinking appeal to pity, probably, but let's go through the answers. No fallacy. Well, let's get back to that and see if we can see why it's a fallacy. I mean, it really does seem to be a fallacy, but let's see what we can eliminate. Alternate description. There's nothing like that going on here at all. There's no like re-describing, like, well, the officer, said I was doing 105 in a 30 mile an hour zone, but I was just being efficient in my driving. I mean, there's nothing like that going on. Straw man, yeah, again, there's no re-description of anybody else's argument. There's nothing like that happening. Appeal to pity, definitely. Feel bad for me because, this conclusion would cause this bad thing to happen to me. I'm trying to influence the judge to reach a verdict favorable to me by making the judge feel sorry for me, right? Oh, I won't be able to afford my daughter's modeling school. So it's appeal to pity, and it's not no fallacy. That's not even... Oh, by the way, also, I'm sort of drawing a line through the answers that are false for this video. You don't have to do that. You can just mark the correct answer. Okay, I'm just doing it for your benefit. You can do it if you want, though, but just make sure it's really clear to whoever's grading it what the answer is that you're selecting, right? Like, don't mark it off like that, where, well, it's not clear. Were they trying to put a mark in the box, or were they sort of like trying to cross out that answer? Make sure that whoever's grading it there's no question as to what answer you're marking. So don't do something like that. Number 9. Charles Manson not only killed people for fun, but built a cult of followers who also killed people and worshipped him. That guy's a total psycho. It looks like it's an argument to the effect that Manson's a psycho. Why? What are the premises? Well, the premises are these psychotic things he does. So immediately I'm thinking, well, this doesn't seem very fallacious to me. But let's look at the answers and see where we go. No fallacy, I think that's a possibility. Ad hominem abusive. Well, you might think that initially, because you might think, oh, well, look, there's a lot of negative things being said about Charles Manson, and there are. And so you might think, well, then maybe it kind of fits the pattern of an ad hominem abusive. Maybe, but if you look at it, the negative things are relevant to the conclusion, right? Saying that Manson kills people for fun, yeah, that's a negative thing to say about somebody, but that's relevant to whether or not the guy's a psycho, which is the conclusion. So it's not ad hominem abusive. Genetic, no, it's not making any appeal to where it's not even replying to anybody else's argument, right? So it's not genetic. It's not straw man. Again, it's not replying to any pre-existing argument and recharacterizing it at all. So the only thing that's going on here is it's no fallacy. Kind of looks like it might be ad hominem abusive because it's saying some negative things about someone, but in this case, those negative things are relevant to the conclusion, so it's not fallacious. Number 10. I know you'd like to think that Jim sent you that card, but it had to be Yuri. Look at the postmark on the envelope. It's from Las Vegas, where Yuri lives, not Dallas. Okay. Let's go through the possibilities. Is it no fallacy? Maybe. In fact, I think it looks pretty good, right? If you're trying to figure out where a card came from, and suppose there's two possibilities, a friend who lives in Dallas, a friend who lives in Las Vegas, and the postmark on the card is from Las Vegas, then that's pretty good reason to think that that's where it came from. So it seems like a decent argument to me, but let's see what the options are. Is it genetic? Well, you might think it's genetic because it's kind of talking about where something came from, right? This postcard came from Las Vegas. It didn't come from Dallas. But I shouldn't use A because we're doing a multiple choice test that has A through D. First off, it's not saying, well, there's an argument that came from some source. It's talking about where a postcard came from. But B, in this case, where this thing came from is relevant, right? That's part of the argument. It's a relevant part of the argument, where it came from. So even if you thought it might be genetic based on the fact that it's appealing to where something came from, which isn't really a genetic, in order for it to be genetic, it has to be the source of an argument, who produced an argument that I'm responding to. But even if you thought it might be genetic, in this case, where the card came from is relevant. So it can't be genetic. Ad hominem association. No, it's not like saying that anybody is associated with any negative thing. So we shouldn't believe what they're saying. There's nothing like that happening. Snobbery. No, nothing like that. It's not, yeah. only, there's some exclusive thing that you should do. That's not even close. So this also looks like no fallacy. Number 11, Professor Mantooth has argued in favor of prayer in public schools, but atheism has been shown to lead to immoral behavior of all sorts. Plus, atheists are more likely to commit crimes and have BO. I'm not sure why I added that last bit here. Maybe I was tired and punchy when I wrote this. It's looking to me like straw man, right? Because if you look here, I'm replying to Professor Mantooth, who's argued in favor of prayer in public schools. But then I say atheism, right? Prayer in public schools. So he's against prayer in public schools, but I'm arguing against atheism, and those are two different things. They're close enough that people might get confused and not see that I changed the topic. And that's why straw man works. The recharacterization is related in some way to the correct characterization, so people don't notice that there's been a shift. But you can see they're different, right? You could be a believer, not an atheist at all, right? You could be a devout Catholic, but still think, be a believer in separation of church and state, and still, think that there shouldn't be prayer in public schools, that everyone should pray before school or, after school or on Sundays. So this is looking like straw man to me. Let's see what the examples are. Oh, also, plus atheists are more likely to commit crimes and have BO. So you might think also, maybe there's ad hominem abusive here. Not exactly, because I'm not arguing against atheists, right? So if the atheists made an argument, or if I was trying to argue against atheists, and I was just saying, look, they commit crimes and they have BO, then that might be an ad hominem abusive. But I'm not arguing against atheists. I'm arguing against Mantooth. I don't know if he's an atheist or not. If this was, plus Mantooth is a criminal and he has BO, well, then that would be abusive, because then I'm actually hurling the abuse on the person, on my opponent here. So this is just kind of irrelevant. But let's look at the examples. Ad hominem abusive, no. Yeah, there's some abuse type stuff here, but it's not being directed at the person I'm arguing against. It's being directed at some other group that I brought into the discussion sort of illegitimately. Strawman, yeah, that's kind of what I think it is. Let's look at the other. Begging the question. No, that's not even happening here at all. Is it no fallacy? No, because I think it is a fallacy. I think it's strawman for the reasons I said, right? Instead of mounting an argument against prayer in public schools, I'm mounting an argument against atheism and then acting as though that's addressed Mantooth's argument. So it's strawman. It's not no fallacy. Last one. You're taking Latin next quarter. Why? Who takes Latin? Seriously, almost everyone in the dorm is taking abnormal psych. Is it an argument? Kind of, right? Especially this, who takes Latin? Seriously, right? Like, why are you doing this? Kind of suggesting that the person should take something else, right? Like it's an argument that, hey, you should be taking abnormal psych. Why? Well, because everyone else is, right? Take that instead of Latin. So initially, when I read this, I'm thinking it looks like a bandwagoning fallacy. You should take abnormal psych. Why? Just because everyone else is taking it. Let's look and see what the possibilities are. Ad hom, no fallacy, maybe. I don't think so. I think it's how I analyzed it, but let's wait and see what other possibilities show up. Bandwagoning, yeah, I think that's what it is. I'll get back to that in a minute. Let's see what other things are. Ad hominem abusive, no, I'm not really. This person's not saying, oh, you're taking Latin. You suck. You're dumb if you take Latin, so take this other class. It's not doing that at all. Alternate description, no, it's not like redescribing taking Latin in some other irrelevant or, inappropriate way. So the only options left are bandwagoning and no fallacy, but it's clearly bandwagoning. And the fact that everyone else is taking abnormal psych, that's not a reason to take it, right? Latin is still legit. So it's not like the Facebook case where, yeah, everyone being on Facebook might be a reason to choose that as your social media platform. That's the whole point of social media, is to be social and have other people on it. So in that case, the fact other people are doing it's relevant. Here it's not. There's nothing relevant really about the fact that a lot of people are taking this class as to why you shouldn't do that one. So it's not no fallacy, it is ad populum bandwagoning. All right, I'm not sure how long that took. Let me look at the time. Holy cow, 40 minutes. But like I said, you saw I was like really going through each one and spending a lot of time reading it. If you know these fallacies, especially these, each one of these is going to take you 10 seconds. Way less time than I spent going through this. So this is very doable in 20 minutes. I would say 10 or 15, but actually writing out the analyses by hand does take a little while. So for this exam, maybe 20 minutes if you know what you're doing, because you're not going to have to go as slowly as I did through these. All right, study hard and good luck on the test.